Excellent. So we'll get started. And first of all, welcome everyone. And thanks for joining Namali and me for this Enneagram Type 3 panel. And indeed, to create some context, the Enneagram, as many of you know, is a personality type system which divides human personalities into 9 types based on specific desires, fears, and patterns of behavior. And today, of course, we're hosting a panel with people who primarily identify as Enneagram Type 3s. And we can think of Type 3s as ambitious achievers who are likely to be energetic, adaptive, and driven. And often Type 3s are called achievers or performers because of their desire to achieve success. So Type 3s are driven to create value by successfully achieving goals. And of course, one of the advantages of striving for success is that Type 3s can be quite good at achieving impressive goals like becoming a competent medical professional or founding a successful corporation or becoming a prominent politician. But of course, one of the disadvantages of striving for success is that Type 3s can overwork themselves and jeopardize their well-being. Now, like we saw during the Type 2 panel, Type 3s, just like Type 2s, are shame types. And indeed, one of the reasons that Type 3s strive towards success can be to alleviate underlying feelings of inadequacy. So Type 3s can deny the shame of not feeling valuable in their own eyes by becoming successful in the eyes of others. And if we think of Type 3s in terms of levels of functioning, we can say that when Type 3s function at an average level, they tend to be self-assured, competent, and ambitious, but also competitive, status-conscious, and emotionally detached. And when Type 3s function at an unhealthy level, they can become deceptive, vengeful, and hostile. And when Type 3s function at a healthy level, they tend to be authentic, purposeful, and persistent. Now, broadly speaking, Type 3s can cultivate healthy functioning by structurally scheduling time to take care of their physical, emotional, and mental well-being, by learning how to feel successful without engaging in destructive competition, and by becoming acquainted with their most authentic self through examining their most fundamental desires and values. So, Namali, what more can you share about Type 3s?
Yeah, Type 3s. I would add to some of the things that you've already said, Lee. Type 3s, basic desire is really just to do everything that they can to really feel valued, to feel valuable in this world, and that they're worthwhile, that their presence really matters. And some of their really basic fears are of failure and not being seen as worthwhile and successful. And really, they really fear being worthless. So whenever we talk about Enneagram types, there's always a little, ooh, ouch. Like there's always an ouch for every Enneagram type. So even when we speak about Enneagram 3, there'll be certain things that are like, ouch. And it's hard to hear that. So just have a lot of compassion for 3s here, as I invite all of us to have compassion for all of our personalities. They began as when we were little people, really little people. And so the Type 3 that has, in the Enneagram, we speak about wings. That means that we're really quite connected to the 2 types that are on either side of us. So Type 3s who tend to be the busy bees of the Enneagram, they are getting things done, and typically just the amount of attention that they pour on their own success and their own productivity and becoming successful means that sometimes they may not be paying as much attention to others in some cases, again, at the average and unhealthy levels. But a 3 with a 2 wing is known as the charmer because they actually do develop better relationships with others. They can actually create and maintain more social bonds. And they're just a little bit more relational. The Type 3 that has a 4 wing is typically known as the professional. They are perhaps less concerned about relationships. They are a little bit more introverted, and they are perhaps a little bit more focused and serious about getting things done. And they can also be a little bit, so type 3s sometimes get this label of deceiving themselves and sometimes also deceiving others in order to gain the success that they want. But a 3 with a 4 wing could actually be a little bit more authentic and honest in the way that they perhaps show up. Under stress, meaning when type 3s are really struggling in their lives, they can actually look like the unhealthy version of a type 9, meaning that these 3s that are so productive and driven can actually become disengaged, and they kind of disappear and they tune out, they space out, and they can sort of fall asleep to their lives. When a 3 is doing really well in their healthiest ways, they can actually look a little bit like the healthy aspect of a type 6. So these really image conscious, competitive, success driven 3s can become really loyal and collaborative and committed in their healthiest way. So now the subtypes are really interesting because you can put a bunch of 3s in a room, and even the 3s among themselves might not recognize each other. It's like, you're a 3? Really? That can't be. This is often because every 3 can look different from one another, sometimes because of their subtypes. The subtypes are primordial responses to life, especially to what we might define as a threat, or we might perceive as a threat to what we're trying to protect about our image, about our livelihood, whatever that might be. So for type 3, there are 3 subtypes for every Enneagram type, and they're self-preservation, social, and sexual. Sexual is also sometimes referred to as one-to-one. So the self-preservation type 3 is really trying to be as self-preserving, as self-sufficient as possible. They want to depend on others as less as possible, as little as possible. They want to create stability for themselves. So that really means that they're working really hard. They really want to make sure that they're taking care of themselves. And they are the hardest working of all 27 subtypes of the Enneagram. Like, they really have invented perhaps the word workaholic. They really struggle to slow down. And so because they're working so hard, they can also tune out sometimes from relationships and their emotional attunement. That feels to it's sort of shoved aside because getting things done and being productive is more important to them sometimes. Now, every type 3 has a certain relationship to vanity, their image. They tend to be image conscious. Out of the 3 subtypes, the self-preserving 3 hides their vanity. In other words, although they do have a certain image consciousness and they want to look good, they also want to be good. The self-preserving 3 really wants to be morally good as well. So they're less flashy in some ways. They might prefer to drive the environmental friendly, high-powered car rather than the flashy Porsche, for example. So they're really concerned about they want to be successful, but they care less about their success being seen by the world. So they are actually referred to as the counter type of the 3. They look less like a 3, like the stereotypical perception of a 3. The social 3 looks a lot like the 3 that we typically read about, the stereotypical sense of the 3. They are the ones who are perhaps the ones that really want the recognition, and they really want the good image. They like the applause. So they really focus a lot on society's acceptance of them, being seen as successful in society. They like to display their success. So they are flashier. They're not perhaps as humble as the self-preserving 3. They're very competitive, and so they can actually look like they want to win all the time, and they can look a little aggressive because of that. So they might look a little bit like a type 8 at times, in the way that a self-preserving 3 could look like a type 1. Very confident, and they dislike being criticized. So they're actually sensitive in some ways to their emotions. They're strong personalities, and they're the ones who will bring out all the credentials and the certificates and the trophies. They're all out, and they also like to fit into the way that society perhaps want them to be seen. So these are the 3s that are sometimes referred to as the chameleons. They can sort of fit in and change colors. And they really like to promote themselves. So they're really good at selling things. Sexual 3s, the 1-to-1 3s, just like any other 1-to-1, what it means is that they're really relationally driven. And they really strive to make themselves look good, but through how they can also make others look good. So they're sort of the quintessential motivational speaker, so to say. So like the Tony Robbins and the Oprahs of the world. Their success, they really strive to feel that their success is because they make others look really successful. So they can sometimes look like 2s because they're so relationally driven. They can really seduce you into their world. Can really attractive, and they will attract you into their lives, and sort of look like, I'm the one who can really make you successful. And the sexual 3 could actually look like the most emotionally connected of the 3, but they're also said to be the ones that know themselves the least, because they actually are attached to the image the most that they portray in order to win the love and attention of the other. They can be competitive in their relationships as well. So with that, what I'd love to do is to invite our panel members to really speak to your own experience. So perhaps I'll start with you, Maud. I'd love to hear from you, Maud. How did you discover the Enneagram, and what made you recognize that I'm a 3?
Thanks, Namali. So I discovered the Enneagram probably about 12 years ago, something like that, as part of a big surge of personal development and trying to understand what was really at the core of what motivated me, what drove me in life, and how I could also leverage that for, creating more happiness. When I first engaged with the Enneagram, I identified first myself as a 7. There was that piece about the high energy, discovering experiences, that sense of full in, etc. And then studying that, I got that clarity about, no, that's really the 3. And there was this big hesitancy with the 4 as well, which I think I identify as my wing. But definitely in terms of what you mentioned as the core wounds or the concerns, I keep coming back to the 3. Happy to share more later.
Okay. How about you, Mary?
I was aware of the Enneagram, and I'd heard about it here and there. And as things keep showing up, I think, well, I guess I got to pay a little more attention to this. And there was a workshop, a weekend workshop. This was about 10 years ago. And so I went to that, and I studied it up beforehand, and figured that I must be a 9. As I look back on that, it could be because that was where I was right then in that space. But so there was a group of 20 of us, and everybody either already knew or fairly quickly figured out what their number was. And I was the only one that still didn't know for sure what I was. And probably the facilitator knew, I guess it's obvious. During the break, there was a woman that came up to me, and she took my hand and she said, do you want to know what you are? And I said, yeah. And she said, I hate to break it to you, but you're a 3. And I'm like, no, I don't want to be a 3. I didn't like the deceitful idea of it. I didn't like some of the descriptions of it. I was like, I don't want to to be that. Yeah, as I studied it further, that made sense. And I think that, especially looking back, how I might have been earlier in life, because now I feel like there's a lot of muddy edges on all of it that I could fit into things. But I do have a strong wing of probably 2 and 4, I think. So, and I guess we're going to talk subtypes later because we figured that out too.
Okay. Well, let's hear just even right now, Mary, share with us what your subtype is.
I couldn't remember the reasons why, but I know that when I looked at all 3 of them, I was like, definitely felt like I was the self-preserving subtype. But as you describe it now, Namali, and I was like, oh, I can see a little bit of that, some of that other stuff in there too, but predominantly the counter type.
Okay, the counter type. Okay, before I go to Gabriel, maybe I can just swing a little bit back to Maud just to check. Maud, do you have a sense of your subtype?
Yeah, so typically identified as social. That's also what came back from certain questionnaires like the RETI or the IQ9. But the more I move with it, the more I see the self-breast coming into line. I don't know if it's aging or what that is, but it's pretty interesting.
Nice, interesting. So with the subtypes, typically the way that teachers like Russ Hudson, for example, teach is that the subtypes are a stack. So we have one that is dominant subtype, then sort of the next most relevant one, and then the third one that falls to the bottom is typically a blind spot for us. So that's interesting as well. And now to you, Gabriel, how did you discover that you are a 3?
Well, I started learning about the Enneagram in my early 20s. And I think that at the time I had a sense that I was a 3, but I didn't really have enough awareness of the subject object awareness to look at myself in such a way, or at least I didn't want to at the time. I picked it up again about 6 years ago, and then it became very relevant. And when I read more about the 3, for me, it was tremendously liberating to realize that this is just a personality structure, that I don't have to take it as me anymore. And that gave me a sense of spaciousness and a way to hold what shows up in my life in the way I meet life in different ways, and give me more choice. So it was a big relief. And since then, I brought it into my work as a coach very strongly. And it unfolds even just getting ready for this conversation. I saw the 3-ness showing up in different subtle ways. And so I think it will be as any personality, a part of that ego structure. It's just the way it will be. And I also realize I'm much more than that.
Absolutely. Yeah. Do you have a sense of your subtype, Gabriel?
Yeah, that's interesting. So I'm kind of between sexual and social.
Okay.
For me, forming secure bonds has always been important. And at the same time, as I moved through my career, I always had a way of extending myself into an environment. I was a teacher, I was a public speaker. I knew how to speak and kind of silence and bring people's attention my way. And I don't know how I knew, there was just a natural ability. And it wasn't always for the good. Sometimes it was over dominating. And I have to be careful of that in groups to give space. If there is a blind spot, it would be self-praise. I'm far away from that.
Nice. Before I hand over to Lee, I want to just quickly check in with Gabriel and Maud. Is it okay for me to let it be known that the two of you are also life partners?
Yes,
Okay.
of course.
Okay, good. I'm actually just really curious to hear just a tiny little bit about what that's like to be life partners who are both type 3s.
Welcome to NO3 hell or heaven. Yeah. Yeah, maybe can I start and you follow up? Beautiful. I think it's helped me a lot to see myself, because of course we tend to, kind of I guess the interaction between us tends to strengthen some of the patterns of behavior, some of the patterns of beliefs that are underlying the type. Some of the things we both avoid, the things we go for, some of the competitiveness might show up more, in interactions. So there's really interesting moments are when we rub angles, for instance, but it could be other things like moments where it's fully aligned. It's like, yeah, it's obvious, we're gonna do it this way. We happen to work together as well often. And it's just this seamless kind of, that's how we operate. That's what we care about. So it can be helpful, can be also challenging at times. And but for sure, it's been a growth space for me. So I'm grateful.
Gabriel, was there something you wanted to add?
We just are in the territory together so often that every now and then I pop out and look at it from a meta perspective and see, oh, what's going on here? What seems to be happening? And I think some of the angles that we come up against would be the subtype, the self-pres subtype, that where Maud will have a very strong preference about the direction something should go in, or about the way something should be achieved, or how many achievements need to be made in a particular day. And I'm much more on another polarity, where I'll take more time for self-care, for example, or nourishing my interior before I can then jump out back into the world. And so that can show up as tension from time to time. On the other hand, we really understand each other and where we're coming from. And I think having that brings a lot more compassion to our way of being with each other.
Nice. Thank you.
Yeah, it's a very beautiful insight into the shared experience of typology. And Gabriel, I really liked what you said about how recognizing that we have a particular personality type can also help us to see the extent to which we're far greater than just our personality patterns and ways of relating to the world. So I think that's very beautifully put. So from my perspective, and I identify mostly as type 1, so I'm in the same competency group. So as many of you know, there's a competency group within the Enneagram, and 1s and 3s share that. So I very much appreciate the ways that type 3s get stuff done, because that's also, of course, something that Enneagram type 1s like to do. But from your own perspectives as 3s, what are the things that you most appreciate about being a 3, and which challenges do you find the most pressing or the most challenging in your life? So we'll go around the circle in the same way, perhaps with Maud first.
Mm-hmm. Okay, what's most wonderful about being a 3? I guess for me, there's a thread of passion. So that the heart type, that sense of, okay, I'm ignited by a vision or something that I see badly needs to happen or be created. And I'm going to go really fast from the idea, the dream. So that's also the 4 wing, kind of, I would exactly feel this way, and kind of almost diving in it. And then just bloody doing it, right? Making it happen, like making my website in 48 hours. I don't know how I did that. But just, and with that sense of like full engagement, the sense of almost the creativity being sparked, the generosity, the sense of meaning and contribution and impact, and that sense of alignment that's possible. Going with that is, of course, exhaustion and burnout, and realizing, okay, I haven't eaten for 6 hours. Interesting, So I've gone through 2 burnouts. I know the drill, and that has taught me. And I think that takes us also to some of the challenges. For me, the challenges that have been around sensing myself, and that's the beauty of the calling for us, is to at least I'm going to speak for me, to come to terms with feeling my feelings instead of numbing out, especially through work, which is my escape strategy. And I do still do that a lot, but staying with what I feel. Okay, what does it have to tell me? Right? And being with it and trusting that I have what it takes in terms of beingness to be holding that, which I didn't trust so much in the past. And so working on presence, working on developing the ability to acknowledge what's here, to come to terms with what is, with more acceptance, sometimes more patience, more compassion, in directing the compassion first to myself, is the journey. And then maybe we'll speak about that later, but what really supports me there is my spiritual path in Zen, and some of the embodied approaches of bringing the body as well, tapping into a greater whole, accepting to trust that I am not alone. It's not just, if it's up to me, it's going to be through me. I am supported. We are interdependent, and kind of going into that field of more lightheartedly collaborating with others, trying stuff, being in the messiness, and enjoying the process itself, and just enjoying aliveness as opposed to an external outcome, is truly beautiful.
That's very beautifully spoken. And I like how you connect indeed the feeling of imperative, so the feeling of passion to create, and that's very that's very beautiful. Thanks. And Mary?
Oh, I like all that, Maud, and I can identify with much of it. I like the feeling of I guess somebody said it to me recently, and they said, "Oh, you're spinning a lot of plates." And okay, let's go back to the original question, because I can go, like they say, you're peeling away the layers of the onion. Well, for me, it's like, here's the bud, and it keeps opening and opening and opening and opening, and it's huge. And I can find out that there's things that I always know in some sense that what I think I'm seeing is there's much, much more there than that I didn't recognize. And when I hold that as a base, there's a spectrum of just incredible beauty of what the world has and unfolds for me. I have gone into I did it by way of denial. I had a couple of major health issues, and one over this past year, where the greater part of a year, I just have this rare disorder. There's the 4 in me. It's very, very rare. Only I have it. And it was very dramatic. And for me, as a, like self-preservation. So it's like, I want the attention, but as soon as I have it, it's like, I want to hide. Imagine, this thing was a skin and muscle disorder, and I've prided myself in my physical abilities and trying to look good. And I had just an awful, facial things, and my eyes were all red, and I was puffy and peeling. And I mean, it was just for months, and it was just awful to go through in a way. But the way I approached it was, I think I said, I'm going to do this like I do everything well. And so just a huge spectrum again of naturopaths and Western medicine and all kinds of things that I was dabbling with, and really enjoying the process of just the discovery of all the things that are out there. So again, just there's so much, and I enjoy so much. And I had a joke about myself, and that when these things come and I crash and burn, that I can OD on balance. So just slowing down and having been retired and some of this stuff. I mean, what I've learned about the Enneagram too is that also, I mean, not two, but that distinguishing the personality types is kind of a parlor game compared to what's really the whole breadth of what can be learned through Enneagram and Enneagram study and the deep spiritual part of it. So that is beautiful. So I have a real strong faith in spiritual seeking that sometimes I just like, okay, I'm sick of that. Now I'm into this, and putting those things into perspective. But did I answer that? I think. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes. Very much, and especially in the health challenges that you described. I also thought that I could hear the path of the Enneagram Type 3, which is to become aware of the fact that the inner radiance is much deeper and more profound than the superficiality of the skin or the appearance. I don't know if that.
To have the compassion with, a few months ago, and I said to my husband, do I look like a cancer patient? And he said, yeah, pretty much, but my hair is growing back and my skin got much better. So it was a fascinating walk in identifying with, especially, walking in San Francisco where I'm getting treatments, I'm getting infusions with the cancer patients and just a whole nother depth and realm of experience in my needing to slow down with that is very, very, very rich.
Well, thanks for sharing, Mary. And for me, it's very beautiful how you can bring a spiritual awareness to this challenge and this process. Thanks. And Gabriel, how about you and the joys and challenges of 3?
Well, it's like, as a young boy, I'll start a little bit about childhood and then describe how that links to the challenge and then how that has unfolded. That I was bullied very badly in high school. Before I moved to this particular city, I was very popular in sports. So having a sense of belonging never was questioned until we moved to a whole new city. And not even a city, it was a small town. And no matter what I did to try to fit in, I was never accepted. And so I learned how to try to belong to different groups. I could be getting drunk with some kids, steal some alcohol and cigarettes and go and have a party. And then the next day I'm in church on Sunday morning. And then a day later, I'm helping an old woman make food for her. And I could be just the right person that everybody needed in any situation. And they wouldn't know me in any other context. And so that was quite okay. It helped me to survive those periods. Eventually, we moved to a whole other city, and I recreated myself as the popular guy. Mm-hmm. And I have a 2-wing, so I learned about charming and to get people to like me. But on the inside, I was completely empty. I felt very lonely and isolated. And it began a deep spiritual search. And I thought that God or meditation would save me and fill the void, but the way I meditated, it didn't. Then I started a very incredible career where I just one day made a phone call and said, I'm a teacher. I teach this particular software program. Do you need any teachers? And they said, no at first, and then called me back later, and turned out that there happened to be an advertising agency who needed somebody. So I quickly learned this program in 4 weeks and taught it. It became very popular. I became their #1 teacher. I filled all their classes. Next thing you know, I'm touring the US, speaking at conferences, and within a few years, I've written several books and done a lot of work for Adobe in the publishing world. The next thing you know, I'm teaching the biggest advertising agencies and the largest publishers in the world. So for me, that was, the top of my career. But along the way, it felt somewhat real for me, but there was a part of me that didn't feel that there was praise and things. It wasn't landing in the part of me that really needed to feel seen and that authentic me. It was more of a performance. And so long as I could perform really well, I could ensure that I was successful. So I ended up overworking. I would work 17-hour days to finish some of this work, writing the book, fitting the chapter in, teaching, doing this, flying to different countries. And eventually, after 18 years, I started asking the question, but what am I really doing this for? And that began a deeper journey. And so now it's been probably 8 years since that journey began. And what I notice is I'll still tend to over effort things. Like last year, I focused on writing my website. It didn't take me 48 hours. It took me probably a year to get it, to find out what the brand is, how I want to be seen, and then noticing what's at risk if I put out the wrong words. How will people perceive it? Will they actually see me the way I want them to see me? Like all these constant questions, checking in, checking out. It was maddening. What's interesting and beautiful about that way of being is there is a belief that I can be whatever I want to be, but at the same time, to become that, I have to over effort. And so these days, this way of being is turning into a core gift, because I have had a spiritual practice for many years. And as I continue to sense into a deep presence that we all are part of, I'm discovering that who I am as this aliveness is enough. And it goes beyond me, this identity of me, in fact, to sense into the we, the interconnected web of life that holds us all together, that we all experience as aware, alive consciousness. And just to experience that and I found my place of belonging, that it's no longer depending on what other people think. And so that has been the core transformation of the gift, to just sense into being that I'm happy to be. And then going beyond that and connecting to that in others has been the most emotionally rewarding. And so, yes, I'm writing another part of my website. I start, and I still catch that way of being. But what I'll do now, and then I'll bring this to a completion, is rather than getting caught up in those ways of checking, how will people perceive it? What will it be like? I just invite myself to come back to that deeper presence that's beyond the personality, and then let this part write and let it naturally shine. So that's been my practice, and I think it will be my practice for life.
It's beautiful, Gabriel. For me, the core of your adventure basically is, I would say, that the spiritual pathway of the three, to be in search of the core of the self and to discover that the core of the self is located in the transpersonal, so beyond the self. And it's wonderful how you describe it. And the way in which you describe it, I would also say, is very three-like, in the sense that it's also an inspiration to others at the same time as it's a recounting of your own experience.
Yeah, I'm really just touched by each of your stories. I got a little teary-eyed. Wow. I've heard this about threes, that because of the threes' need for sort of feeling like they are worthwhile in this world. They seek success so much, imagining that that's the way that they would get to be worthwhile, to take up space in this world. And every type is doing that same thing in a different way. And for type 3s, that drive to become successful means that they will start doing things without really checking in to see, is this what I really want to do? And that oftentimes 3s are the ones I've heard experience burnout the most. And that's because they eventually hit a wall and they realize, gosh, I've dedicated so much time and energy and space and investment into whatever that I'm doing, being the Adobe Illustrator master teacher, and then sort of realizing, is this really what I want to do? And so I've heard this story a lot from many, many, many 3s. I also feel 3s are the ones who are envied the most. So type 4s struggle with envy because they keep comparing themselves to others, and usually always they come out at the bottom of the pile. 3s, because of how much they have worked hard, and they actually do, some of the most successful people in any industry all over the world are 3s. 7s, 8s, and 3s are almost always the CEOs of companies and such. And it comes at a cost for 3s. It really comes at a cost for many 3s unless they become self-aware. So, we all rub each other the wrong way sometimes because of our personalities, right? And this friction sometimes. So I'm curious, maybe if each of you can speak a little bit to, and after this question, maybe we'll also engage the audience a little bit. I'm curious to hear from each of you, how do you see as yourself being misunderstood or misread or being lumped into that stereotypical sort of, here's the type 3, you're a type 3. How would you wish that the rest of us can be more aligned with you, be more supportive of you, hear you more, see you more? And really, so how do you wish we understood you more and honored you more? So perhaps I'd love to start again with Maud.
Thank you for that question. Different things came to mind. Some of them having to do with the drive, and some of them with the competitiveness, maybe, and there might be other elements coming up. And that's also linked to, orienting quadrants, if we think of integrals. But often I tend to be really focused, let's say within a group or a team. Usually I take up roles which are going to be about creating the vision or sharing it, kind of driving meaning, kind of gathering people, energizing people around that, and like giving pacing and kind of bring everyone together to achieve the stuff, right? So the deliverable has often been a lot in my sights. Because there's also kind of a lot of diplomacy in me. I don't think I've ever come too much as highly pushy or, could have been, but there is this kind of sometimes abrupt coldness of like, okay, guys, let's just focus on the real stuff. Although I'm very relational, I think I really thrive with that. I'm nourished by relationships. There are moments where I just don't have the patience. I'm like, okay, like enough small talk. Like, let's just, and that can even feel a bit rough to myself. So I'm like, oh, and then I kind of adjust. So that has been, I think in particular, as I was starting this journey of like the compassion and the being with what is and the like being with messiness, I might be a little bit more tender now, but that's often an edge. And then there's this piece about what I feel often misunderstood is that as 3s, I think we receive a lot of projections about the success and the aiming high and maybe the kind of motivational speaker style. So maybe there is this sense of artificiality or that sense of why is this girl gonna step onto me to achieve her stuff? Or and I can't control projections that are put upon me, right? But there have been moments in life where I felt like my heart was genuinely into the stuff, like I really care about this thing that we're creating or something. And then maybe because of the high energy that I was putting into it, or the sense of maybe even creatively competing with another team, or having that sense of putting a challenge, that people might feel far from me because of that projection or perception of competitiveness. And I think many of my behaviors can be competitive. I love the surge in creativity that comes when we are, in parallel thinking about stuff and bringing our best selves. And that feels alive to me. That's also some of the ways that nature operates in a healthy way. But so when I feel that my genuine care is not there, it's really painful. And I think I want to highlight that this is often in conjunction with what you described earlier, Namali, about that almost like the empty compass, like that sense that at the same time as what I'm saying, that I care, etc., I found myself a number of times in my life genuinely feeling like I'm all in for something. That happened actually much more in the past, but I'm all in for something. This is my cause. This is, what I'm dedicating my life to. And it was often borrowed from my parents' values, for instance, or societal things about what's the kind of profession that's most, a noble or something like that. And so there have been moments where I realized after the fact, this passion it felt completely genuine. And if you had told me that it was not genuine, I would have felt so wounded. But there is that piece that because I was not able until more recently to sense genuinely into this too. What does that actually mean to me? And because I was operating on someone else's agenda or something that I had taken within me, that maybe there was a discrepancy between, maybe that was what people actually perceived. And I think we need to have the humility to recognize, wow, maybe there was something on the nonverbal side or something else where people were genuinely asking themselves, why does she care about that? Is that authentic? And I think that authenticity piece, particularly for me with the 4 wing, is like when I feel that people question my authenticity, there is a deep sadness, a sense of of the grief. And I think that's because for me, it points to the sense of absolute emptiness within, which is the one thing that I least want to feel, right? Because does that mean that there is a void inside, this absolute vanity? And in a sense, it's great, right? Because it's the great teacher that it brings us back to, it's all empty, girl. Yeah, I think it's an interesting thread to follow for the future too. Did I answer your question?
Yeah. But I want to probe you just a little bit, or invite you just a little bit to say, if you could ask something of us or others, as I wish you would, what would that be?
I love that. What would that be? I wish you would go beyond the surface. I wish you could open your heart to the unfolding layers, to the rhythm it takes me to reveal myself. If you could grant me that.
That's beautiful. Thank you. Thanks for sharing that, Maud. Yeah. So same thing to you, Mary. How can we honor you more, as sometimes you might be even stuck in the fixations of the 3, just like all of us get stuck, fixated in our own sort of type personality. So how do you wish we can be more honoring of where you get stuck and how we can see you more?
That's a tough question for me. I can compartmentalize and I can know who I can get what I want. If I even know what I want. A lot of times I don't know what I want, and I don't know what's that important to me. So I can talk with certain friends that will offer me what I must be craving. If I feel a sense of suffering or a need for something, a lot of times it's what I need to open up to be willing to accept, and then recognize it was there all along. You know, when I didn't think my husband cared anything about what I did, and wasn't that interested. But when I was really needing, you know, someone to hold me for balance, or somebody to take me places, or couldn't drive, or stuff like that, I mean, he was there, and he was probably always there. And so people maybe are, but I need to, you know, the times that I'd be in like discussion groups with people, I would be, you know, like a counseling type thing. It seems like I'd look back at myself and I think, well, I was just parroting the person who was the facilitator. And it wasn't until I shared some hurt or need that I had that people really came out and rallied. So I have a belief that, you know, people are good and they're there in the present for me. The unlocking needs to be the willingness for me to open up and accept that. So I'm not going to say you guys aren't giving me what I need or what I want. But in a way, I will, okay, you know, these people aren't hearing me, or I'm not, you know, it's not interesting to them. So, you know, wipe the dust off or shake the dust off my feet and go somewhere else. And I can do that. So, yeah.
So is it something, how would you say, I wish you would? How might you complete that sentence?
I wish you would. Well, Maud had a good one. I wish you'd go below the surface, and, you know, and I want to know more about you. And I think I'm pretty good about recognizing when it's okay for me to be authentically curious, and people will open up to me. And I love, you know, learning about other people and what their passions are and where they come from and the different perspectives. This new thing about aperspectival that I'm learning from the SES book, I was like, whoa, that's like seeing all kinds of things at once. You know, the Picasso painting that can see the front of the person and the back of the person at the same time. I was like, that's blowing me away, because I'm enjoying the mix of that, the soup of that. So yeah, but the thing is, if they're, you know, if someone's not real with me, or I don't think they are, you know, maybe I need to look at, am I being real? You know, and I don't like that accusation, not from other people, but from reading about my type. That's the thing I hate the most, is like, I'm not deceitful. Am I deceitful? I don't want to go there. So, am I getting closer to answering that?
Yeah, no, you're good. Sorry. What I'm hearing from both of you, and just before I hand over to Gabriel to answer the same question, I think that threes, because they do show up as so self-assured and successful, and, you know, they really do project that image, that the rest of us sometimes, or even I'll just speak for myself, I can feel intimidated by type threes. And so what you're both inviting in some ways is actually to go deeper. Like, maybe I shouldn't be so afraid and intimidated. Maybe I can actually just like pull more out of you. No, like, Maud, I want more. Or Mary, no, I want more. Like, go deeper. Like, there's something in there that I think what I'm hearing from you both is the rest of us shouldn't be afraid to actually call that out of you. Yeah. Okay. Gabriel, how do you wish we would see and honor you more?
Well, I think you were saying it very well, Namali. And when you say pull it out of you, I would maybe slightly shift that and say, how can I invite you out such that I can see you the way you want to feel seen?
Yeah.
And I'm speaking for myself when I say that, because I always know what I want. Like, that hasn't been a challenge for me as a three. But being able to ask for what I need has been the most challenging. the most vulnerable, because it means putting myself out as needing something and not being seen as, having it all together. So what I would love others to do is invite me to say, like, I'd love to know more of you. And in a way that they're holding me in compassion. And then I would also add, we can often be seen as arrogant. Maybe that's what you were pointing to a moment ago. And I notice when I'm seen as arrogant is when I'm unwilling to be more courageously authentic. So I was at a retreat, a meditation retreat, and I was sharing myself authentically, but maybe I wasn't allowing myself to be seen as so much. And the Zen teacher caught hold of this. And we were in a place where he just whispered in my ear and says, Gabriel, you've come so far and you've got so far to go. And that just like a stab in my heart, because this was the very person I wanted to be seen from. And like in that moment, I would have loved for him to not judge me for being arrogant, but really see the tender one underneath all that. And then I guess a last example would be like I was in a role with a team, and I was often criticized for being over perfecting every detail. And Gabriel, you would deliver things at 95% perfection, and they're 95% perfect, and you still don't deliver it on time. And you could have already delivered the thing because it's almost perfect. And why aren't we seeing your work? Because I would withhold it. I wouldn't want to reveal my work until it was just right. And we would miss a deadline or two now and then because of that. But for me, it was more important to get it just right. In that moment, I would have loved them to say, you're like, if in a perfect world that was made for Enneagram 3s, they would have said, wow, you're such a valuable part of the team. And even when you make mistakes, we just love the iterations that you're bringing. We'd love to see what awesome creative ideas you're coming up with. And if they're not perfect and they're a failure, that's okay. Let us be a part of that with you. So there are a few examples if I lived in a perfect world.
Yeah, that's...
Sorry,
Amalia.
yeah. I'll just really just briefly respond and hand over to you, Lee. Yeah, no, just really wonderful. One thing that is interesting is I actually don't experience 3s as arrogant. That's not, it's usually, for me, it's the busyness that makes them inaccessible. Like they're so like, I'm going to get this done. Let's get this done. Let's get this done. That for me, the struggle is sometimes to feel like you're actually there, or that you're actually paying attention to others around, or something like that. But I rarely have experienced Enneagram 3s as arrogant. There's a couple other types that I do experience as arrogant, but that's for later.
Well, maybe I can qualify that super brief.
Yeah.
When it becomes all about me, because I'm the one that needs to be the center of attention so that I feel special, that can come out as arrogance.
Ah, yeah. Okay. Yeah. Excellent. Mary, you wanted to add something?
Yeah, I have something to add to that too. I had someone say to me once, a new person that I had just met, and she said, I'd really like to get to know you more, and I'd like to be your friend, but I think you seem like you're too busy. And I said, you might be surprised, because I feel like I can make time for whatever I need to, and I did.
Yeah, that's beautiful. And the 3 of you are all pointing to the subject that Namali and I wanted to touch on next, and that is asking the audience members to engage with you to see more of you. So this is, I think, a perfect segue. So are there any questions from people in the audience?
I'm also curious to hear if, something that happens in these panels is that when we I'm just removing the spotlights here so that now we can all see each other as a group. Sometimes in panels, when we listen to others speaking of their type, we begin, some of us who aren't maybe too clear about what our type is can sometimes feel like, wow, I really resonate with this panel. I can really feel that. So that would be interesting also if some of you felt like I really resonate with what you're saying and how you might be in your body, in your personality. And then but also just questions for our incredible panel members here. What you might like to know about what it's like to be a 3.
Yes. Hello there.
Hi,
So,
Ishan.
I am from India, and I would like to let you know my thoughts about being a performer here. So, as you guys are talking, I have just related to myself. It's my first time learning about Enneagram, though. Though I have completely related to the fact, like when I was in the childhood, and I've been in a state of completely achieving and excelling at studies everywhere. And even though my family projected me out like you can do even better, so that thing also happened with me. And after that, when I went to the friend circles and I experienced myself, doing the having the best in the class and being the best of everything. I just wanted to be more famous, and I became famous in that thing too. And what I observed as a pattern in that, as a 3, I have, we people of 3 have extremely raw power in everything. Everywhere we go, every society or culture we fit in, any system we fit in, we just fill it with such a raw power, like it can, just spiral things upward with such an eros, so to say. So all that eros, we has, so full of it, and that just fills up everything in any circle I sit in, any type of people I sit in, any type of talks they talk, I can escalate them from there to anything better from that. So that raw power I can see in me as a performer, as a achiever. So, and as soon as I got in touch with integral studies for the first time, it gave me a framework, not only in the action sense, but also in the internal sense, from the mind sense. We have so much raw power. Mind, when put in the things, it just grabs it and it just let the things go process in such a fashion. Like this raw energy just fuels things up. So when I get into the integral thing, my mind got framework, and that framework just it just push things upward. It give me power to put myself into. And similarly, I don't have any construct, in a sense, the sense of direction as a performer. Performer just performs on given direction. So I just saw myself with a certain circle I am in. That circle has such an influence on me that I drive that. If I am with the friends who are having fun, I will have the fun to another level. If I am with the circle who are doing on a professional works, I will get the professional work onto another level. So that is the raw power I have observed in that thing.
Thank you. Thanks for sharing, Ishan.
And Sandy, you also had your hand up, indeed.
Yeah, I want Mary to be reassured. I'm not going to ask anything personal about her, but I'm actually asking about a client of mine. I'm a psychologist, and I've had one client in my life that's a 3. I mean, it blows my mind, and I'm stuck with him. He's disabled. He's 54. I just, what can I say to him? Because every time I try to get anything, he just go, I have to be successful. If I'm not successful, I'm not anything. So that's what I'm just curious. Could you guys tell me anything that I could possibly say to him? I mean, that might help.
Okay, let me just jump in with what comes to me. What comes to me is the introject part of that, like that message of I must be successful, else whatever the doom is going to happen, right? Like, for instance, I believe that in every 3 stories, and I'm happy to hear if you have other viewpoints, in every 3 stories is a major way of taking that message inside of our worlds and making it, using it to kind of plug into the void inside in terms of identity and strategy to try and have some form of an identity, right? So, and so for me, it was very much about taking in messages from my parents, about possibilities in life that they didn't have, but that I would have because of all the effort they gave to give me all those choices, and that because of the public school. And it was like, this contradictory message, like I couldn't follow my dreams, but you can. So do it. You have all the possibilities, which was a bit of a double message, right? So you can, so you must, right? Because I didn't have that choice. So it's taken me like 30 freaking years to understand, like, Dad, I love you. I cannot live your dreams for you. It's not my role. It's not okay, right? And so like that question of who am I when I'm not successful, and like working with, like re-owning that, not re-owning, sorry, identifying that this is a message from some outside, what age was the person when they first believed that, or was there anyone who told them that? I think that might be interesting, and to maybe recognize the message from a parent or another figure of authority, and then enabling them to, in whichever modality you practice, Sandy, as a therapist, to kind of keep it back. Even just physically, or for me, constellations have been really helpful, and like giving something heavy back. I love you, Dad, and your dreams belong to you, and I'm going to follow my dreams, whatever the heck they are. And yeah, hope that helps.
Thanks. Yeah.
My instant hit on that was, if you and he are already talking in the 3 language, and he's acknowledging that he's a 3. That's pretty direct, and that's pretty, that's asking of, this is what I need. So maybe to congratulate him on that success, and let's go into that a little further.
Okay.
I work with quite a lot of 3s, in fact, in my coaching. Somehow I'm attracted to working with them, or vice versa. And maybe one way in is to just kind of honor what this belief is bringing into his life, and invite him to share, like, well, having this belief, what is it? What are the outcomes that it has led to you to? What are those successful outcomes? And then also to invite him into, well, and when does that belief start to get in your way? What does it start to close down? What kind of pain does it begin to create? And then basically helping them to somehow see that when their beliefs are dependent on the positive outcomes or the positive regard of others, what that enables and what it closes down. And then to maybe help them shift to another way of seeing where they can find their core sense of self-worth from, and what might that look like. But that's the most we have time for. But yeah, just really honoring it, and then finding out from this person what they see as it closing down would be 2 moves that could open up some space to work with.
Okay, good. I will try that. I'm impressed with the 3 of you. You're so healthy. It's like, it's so great to see that. So that's all. Thanks.
Thank you.
Maybe if I could add something, Sandy, I'm not sure. Maybe that's the 2-wing wanting to help you at all costs. I don't know. Is it okay if I drop in my 2 cents? Just wanted to say that, what if you were to enable this person to experience an experience of being unconditionally loved by you, and giving that transmission of presence, and maybe that workshop with us today helps you to further notice whichever allergies you might have to that profile, or kind of open up your heart more, and from that place of unconditional love, like offering this person this experience of presence and being loved unconditionally, and almost beyond words, enabling him to touch that space where they can trust that they are, and they're included and they're loved, maybe with what they bring, the success they're having with you, and being courageous, etc., but also regardless, and just because, right?
I think it's interesting to me that I had the hardest time connecting to him. And so it's hard for me to show him love. So that's really good feedback. Thank you.
I would actually say, Sandy, that when we've released this video, if you share it with him, this will be an example of the fact that you feel a deep devotion towards him. So we have Cheryl and Jim have their hands up. So please, Cheryl,
Well, first of all, I want to start out by thanking the three of you for what you said. I'm feeling really moved by this. I have an uncle who I'm quite sure is a 3, and I hope you don't mind me asking a question. Is he was extremely successful, extremely high achieving CEO. He was my mother's sister's husband, so a little bit of a distance there, but he also kept himself somewhat apart from the family, and it was really noticeable, actually. And like, you get just this much of his time and he'd disappear. And so all of the rest of us, would share it. We have quite admired him, but we're really intimidated by him. But his wife, my beloved aunt, died last year. And my uncle has started to open up. Like, he's expressing his love and his care for us. And for me, it's just so freaking beautiful that I want to make sure that I don't intrude onto him too much. And I think he can probably speak for himself if I was, but I just wonder if you got any advice on where his stress points might be, because I would prefer not to get to the point where he felt he needed to speak up. Is there anything I should be watching for as we're developing this new relationship?
Gabe, or?
Yeah, the first thing that comes up for me is, have you thought about sharing how that with him? To be like, wow, I'm noticing a different you showing up, and I'm really appreciating that. It has me feeling closer to you. Now, I'm not sure how if it will backfire or not, but if you say he's beginning to open up and there's a tenderness there, maybe you can find a way of saying that in words that might land with him. It's more of sharing your experience and seeing how he responds.
Yeah, and at my aunt's celebration, I did, as we were parting, I just said, "Don't disappear."
Right. And that I felt that as a bit of a judgment and a wanting for more of him.
Yeah.
But if you said, I love to experience more of this, it's so genuine, or whatever words you might use, invites me to come out of my protective layer. I'm not sure how Maud or Mary feel about that approach.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
I like that, to accentuate what you're looking for, not a double negative of don't and disappear. That's it's probably a tender time. It's so close to when she passed, that it's probably a good window for him to feel welcomed into your life, because he might have felt under her shadow. Some people, my husband feels like, well, that's her family, this is my family. For him to know your family, and we treasure any time we get with you.
Maybe we'll close the call by reading a little Rumi quote, which we have now. Lee and I discovered them after we had the type 1 call. But we are going to try and bring this to each of our future type calls. So maybe just very briefly, Gabriel, Maud, and Mary can speak a little bit to these lines from Rumi. Rumi says, "That which is false troubles the heart, but truth brings joyous tranquility." I'm wondering, as a 3, very briefly, what that brings up for you.
I love that. Thank you for this beauty. And for me, what comes up is the sense of vagrancy that I felt often in my life, in terms of, like that quest of like, who am I really? And kind of sometimes not being sure about whether my compass was pointing to what others wanted or what I wanted. And that sense of what I described earlier is, what is the authenticity of my passion? which is very unsettling. It's like, you're putting everything into it and you're not even sure that you're destroying your health for something meaningful. And I think for me, the trajectory of this life is gently inviting me into the everlasting home of, come on, child, tread lightly. You've always been loved. You've always been welcome. There's nothing to earn. You are wonderful as you are. And this is what when I'm gently practicing with myself, using like ideal parent figure work and things like that. And accepting that maybe it's okay to not be anyone, and just exploring with that. What would it be like to be no one, and be okay with that?
Thank you, Maud. Mary, do you have?
Yes, that's good. I like it. I feel the kind of fluttering of butterflies as I feel in the intenseness of going into ourselves, and to having these two other people on the panel with me that I can really hear and identify with in so many ways. So the invitation to go there in a yet unknown territory that I haven't studied it up, I haven't learned the right terms to use, I haven't, figured out. That's it. So that being okay with that abstractness of that, and thank you. I'll look forward to looking closer and rereading that Rumi quote.
Wonderful. Thank you, Mary. How about you, Gabriel?
What that quote brings up for me is that what brings the trouble to the heart is seeking outside of myself, seeking into the world, and seeking from others what I already am at my essence.
Mm-hmm.
And so life really becomes a sharing of essence rather than a seeking of it through my actions, my accomplishments, and what others believe. And I cannot articulate how beautiful it is to just be that overwhelming presence and joy that I am, that we all are. But as a 3, it feels exceptionally delicious to rest in that space and just let it share and not need to be doing anything with it.
Oh, it's beautiful, Gabriel.
Beautiful, everyone. Beautiful. Thank you so much, Maud, Mary, and Gabriel.